This meeting is being recorded.
Greetings and welcome to Sister Source Conversations, where we have interesting topics and equally interesting guests. I'm Reverend Qiyamah Rahman, your host, and today our topic is the power of research as storytelling and resistance. Our guest, beginning with Barbara Corprew, is a member and creator of All Souls Church Black Members History Project. Welcome, Barbara. We also have Jim, and if you can indicate, you'd probably know that was Barbara. Jim Kelley, who is a member and, as I refer to him, resident historian at the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Atlanta. And our third guest is the Reverend Dr. Morrison-Reed, author, researcher, historian, and retired minister. Welcome, each of you, and thank you for accepting my invitation to Sister Source Conversations. We're just going to jump right into our topic of the power of research as storytelling and resistance, and begin with you, Barbara.
Sure. I created the Black Members History Project for my church's bicentennial, which was this year. And it was really created to appreciate, celebrate, and share memories about early Black members who started coming to All Souls in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. The website went live in February of 2022, and it consists of 42 narratives with pictures. It took about 7 months of research and writing and discoveries, both large and small. And it was formatted by the membership chair at All Souls, who is also the technological person who puts together the Sunday services. And I couldn't have done it without him because he formatted it for me and designed the site. The project grew out of a request by our interim minister at the time, Reverend Kathleen Rowlands. She had made a request to the Archives Committee for information about the first African-American family who joined All Souls, because she wanted to give a sermon about it. Well, they reached out to me, and they reached out to me because I was a longtime member, grew up in the Sunday school. I'm a product of the Sunday school. And of course, I have a fond memory of early members because I started coming in like 1958, 1959, when I was 9 or 10. It seemed like this is a story of All Souls early members that was personal to me and a story that I needed to tell and that I should research. All Souls is and was my spiritual home. And like I said, I started coming in the late 1950s. Bernice Just, who was the first Black DRE in our denomination, and the first person of color hired at All Souls, took my hand my first Sunday and walked me to my Sunday school class. Oh, wow. So the ongoing story of All Souls would have been incomplete without a telling of the story of the African-American members who joined it, who were proud to be members of the church and of this faith, and for whom this church was their spiritual home, their hope, and happiness. As originally conceived, it was to be a photo booklet of the many Black lives who had started coming to the church, many of whom members now didn't even know. I started the project in April and May by researching names and faces in the old members' cards, the church directories, newspaper obituaries, and web searches, as well as conversations with older Black members who could remember and identify Black members that I didn't even know. The early Black members were accomplished teachers, architects, scientists, doctors, lawyers. They were all pioneers in their fields, as well as community activists and change makers. And many of them were history makers in their own right. And so lifting up these people and appreciating the richness of All Souls' diversity then was really important and really shows why it is important to do this kind of research, because we don't know who's in the pews. The church has done much research about its members. There is the book, and the new book, Washingtonian Unitarianism, which was redone with the bicentennial. And there has been also a presentation on the minister's journey that covered all of the ministers that had headed All Souls Unitarian. But no history had been done of African-American members. And while we are rich with history about David Eaton, we did not know and lift up those early Black members who came before him. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of surprises for me in my effort. One surprise was a Norma Boyd who joined the church in October of 1953 and who died at 97 years of age in 1985. She was not someone I knew. Her name was not someone I had heard. But as it turned out, during my research, she was one of the original 16 co-founders and incorporators of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. I looked up and even found a recorded interview of Boyd from 1976, where she talked about what attracted her to All Souls and our faith, and how she came to join it and leave her original church of birth. I built upon Mark Morrison-Reed's research, probably in ways that he doesn't know, but his Black pioneers in a white denomination, and his other book about darkening the doorways were really important. They highlighted Bernice Just because they lifted up her name, but there was no picture. There was no context given as to who she was, where she came from, what she did upon leaving All Souls. He also opened my eyes to Don Speed Goodloe and Don Goodloe's son, who was a member of All Souls. As a matter of fact, it was the son who arranged for his father's memorial service at All Souls. Well, it was from the information in Mark Morrison-Reed's book that I was able to pull Don Goodloe's membership card, see when he joined, okay, and find out what committees he served on, what activities he had done in the city, because he was an active civic leader in the Washington area. I think the story of All Souls is and would have been incomplete without the story of the Black members who were part of it.
That's amazing. And that's exactly why I extended an invitation to you, Barbara. Thank you so much for those reflections. And Jim, you have the floor.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Tough act to follow, Barbara, but I will try. Okay, I'm Jim Kelley, a member of Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Atlanta, UUCA for short. And as Qiyamah mentioned, I am kind of the resident historian. I wrote my thesis on Theodore Parker, and they got me going down the road of UU history. And I'm currently trying to write a book on the church, which is very interesting to me. I want to speak to those UUs, lay members and clergy, if they wish, who are interested in exploring the church histories, their own church or denominational or UU history in general. Most of my my church is made up mainly of what we call come outers. Our members have come out of other religions. They were not, with a few exceptions, not born as UUs. So they don't have a lot of knowledge of the history of the church. And my job is to try to fulfill that, to teach, to explore that. And a lot of what they know is actually not correct. There's a lot of myths and legends have been built up around certain people in our church. And it's important that we tell the truth, tell history honestly. I use the phrase, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not all our history is glorious. There's some good things, but it's not all glory. Now, as you do your research, watch out for hearsay and rumors. I'll give you an example of one that I am constantly battling. Reverend George Cheney founded the first Unitarian church in Atlanta. He was a Boston UU minister, quite wealthy actually. And it was 1884. And someone wrote in his obituary after he died that he had opened the church library to African Americans. I researched this claim thoroughly, and it just did not happen. It's absolutely wrong. Remember, this was post-Civil War at Deep South Atlanta. That policy would have not gone unnoticed, to say the least. But as I try to dispel that legend, it just will not die. I've even heard it spouted from the pulpit, but that does not make it correct. Cheney was a good man. I admire him a lot. He's a Unitarian hero, but we don't need to deify people like him. We don't need to make them more than they are. I'm going to give some tips for writing what I think are writing history, doing your research. Avoid sounding too academic. Write so people can read it. I know we have a lot of PhDs in our congregations, and we're well educated, but they still don't want to read boring academic books. A wise member once told me that easy reading is hard writing. It takes effort to write what people want to read, and you've got to do that to make it viable. My advisor told me this. It might sound counter or illogical, but he said, start writing before you're ready. You don't wait until you have all your information, because you're never going to have all your information. Something will come up. There's always more to learn. You can go back and tweak your work as new information comes in. That's a real benefit of word processing. You can go back and cut and paste and insert and so forth. As you learn, as you become more familiar, I urge you to teach RE classes at your church to adults and or children. Teenagers would be very good. You'll be surprised how much interest there is that you'll find in the history. In my church, there's a longing, since our members don't have the knowledge, they have a longing to learn. So there's an interest in learning the history. Okay, sources, and I'm sure we all know this. There's two types, primary and secondary. Primary are the original documents, newspaper articles, sermons, photos, artifacts, and so on. I think I just went away. Of course, then secondary are things that were written after the source, after the time, books, papers, letters, dissertations, thesis, anything written after the fact. Okay, and Barbara mentioned this too, church archives. I'm lucky, I think Barbara, you must have been too, to have good, well-organized archives. If you don't have that, go through the old file cabinets, the boxes in the basement, storage rooms, and organize the old newsletters, orders of service, sermons, correspondence, newspaper clippings, anything that might be of interest. And also, don't forget to save the online information. Nowadays, we don't have a newsletter. We have Friday updates on our email. important that the church saves those too. Find a safe place to store them, or if you can, donate your papers, archives to a college library with a special collection section, or a maybe even a public library if they have that. I am very fortunate, very fortunate that our archives are at Candor School of Theology at Emory University. And even better, some are online. One of our members, Jay Kiskell, has digitized a lot of our information, and that has made it just my job much easier. Oh, I'm too fast. Other places, contact Meadville Lombard about getting an account. As a community member, you can get a account, check out books, and access much of what they have, and they have quite a bit. Newspapers. I use a source called newspapers.com. And Barbara, you may be familiar with this. It's part of ancestry.com. It's a paid service, but it's excellent. You can pull up newspaper articles way back. Now, like everything else, it does not have every newspaper, or it's not totally complete, but it's quite valuable. I have access to the Atlanta Constitution going way back to our beginning, even before. At one time, local newspapers wrote extensively or reported extensively about church happenings. It's not, I don't think it's done as much now, but they report on everything from bake sales to the sermons. They even recap sermons sometimes, changes in ministers, scandals, controversies, everything. And both the U's in our town were frequently condemned by our Southern Baptist or our Southern Orthodox clergy. And that made for some good controversy and some good reading. Google Books. Google Books has digitized many Unitarian and Universalist publications, Christian Register, Onward, many others, and that's a very good source. Of course, interview long-term members, find out what they know, but don't wait, because they're not going to be around. We've lost many recently, and it's going to happen. We pay taxes and we die. That we know about. But even short conversations can give insights, information. Write it down, log it, record it, or make notes. Sometimes you just get plain lucky. I was on a totally unrelated Zoom call with some church members and a long-term member. He's one of the rare generation. He knows computers and he's of our age. So he said, well, I've scanned newsletters and the directories going back to the early 2000s. And I go, wait a minute, Paul, what'd you say? Can I have that? And yes, they're on a flash drive, and it's just pure happenstance. Footnotes. Historians have to footnote everything. I've been trained, indoctrinated to do everything in the Chicago Manual of Style. There's a website there, Chicago Manual of Style.org. I think that the important thing is to leave a path or a trace so you can verify your sources, verify what you're saying. That's again, as a historian, that's what I've been trained. I spend most of my time writing footnotes, not documents sometimes. I'm going to talk a few minutes about race. Now, obviously, I'm not writing my history from a Black perspective. No surprises there, I don't think. But after I wrote my thesis on Theodore Parker, I became aware of the role that that race has played in our church, our a denomination and our local church. And it's important that we report on it honestly. To give you an example, my congregation's worst and best racial moments began in 1948. The two local, the Unitarian and Universalist churches had merged in Atlanta in 1918. It was a rocky marriage. They really didn't merge, get along too well, the two U's. In the 40s, we were accused of being communists during the Red Scare. Then it's pretty unsteady. And then when a black man, Dr. Thomas Jones of Atlanta University, came to church one Sunday. He was actually a Unitarian from Ohio, had moved to Atlanta, came to church. But this was a spark that lit a fire, and all hell broke loose. The church went through 3 years of turmoil until finally the AUA, which had the title to the building, sold the building, dissolved the church. They were just sick and tired of this dysfunctional Atlanta church. Later, they sent Reverend Glenn Canfield to Atlanta with the explicit purpose of forming an integrated church. And we were reborn, and we did become the first integrated church in Atlanta. We had some very distinguished early members. Whitney Young was one of our members. Lorenzo Benz, you may not know him. He was an Atlanta leader of the NAACP. And a member of the Georgia House of Representatives, and others. It took courage, I think, to be part of the integrated church in the 1950s. These were leaders that we can be very, very proud of. We have more work to do. We're not as diverse as we should be. Barbara, I don't think we're not as diverse as All Souls, but it's important that we understand what the role that race has played. One thing I'd like to go back to is use stories and anecdotes to make your reading more readable. I have an example I'm going to put in the book. As our now deceased, but Minister Emeritus Edward Frost was going between England and the U.S. on the Queen Mary. This is back in the day when transatlantic ocean liners were in vogue. He was not a good swimmer. He was not athletic. He was not a good swimmer. Right? I see some smiles. He got in trouble in the deep end of the pool, and he was struggling. Luckily for him, Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan actor, Olympic swimmer, was on board. He jumped in and saved Edward and put him to safety. Thanks to Tarzan, we got a great minister. I got to put that in my book. I just got to put that in my book somehow. Things like that add life, a little spice, a little enjoyment to the writing. That's really all I have. I hope I'll just pass it on now back to you, Qiyamah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jim, for those reflections and those very concrete tips in terms of conducting research, particularly for laypersons who are inexperienced researchers. Reverend Dr. Mark Morrison-Reed, you are on.
Thank you, Qiyamah. So it's good to see you. It's good to be here. My story is like Barbara's, in that I grew up in First Church, Chicago, around the same time. I think a little older. We started attending in I've got my I've got my christening paper. It's 1952. So I'm 3 years old. And we were not the first African-American members. It was probably Polly McCoo. And that had, I have these stories like it was telling, it was a big deal when she tried to join, and there was a major fallout in the board, and they had it out, and James Luther Adams was there. And he participated in this decision, that they were going to be an integrated church, and 2 board members resigned following that. So that was, I think it was like 47, 48. So any case, I grew up in an integrated church, as Barbara did. And I thought that was normal. You know, I thought that's the way you churches were. What did I know? It was, I, so because that's all I knew. And after I entered Meadville Lombard in '74, I discovered it otherwise. And I began to wonder, well, why? What's going on here? So in my first history class in preparation for ministry, I wrote a paper on Black UUs. Well, there was a problem. The problem was there was nothing. All I could find was a passage from David Park in Stream of Light about Egbert Ethelred Brown, and a passage in Charles Little's Freedom Moves Westward about the Free Religious Fellowship, was a Black congregation on the south side of Chicago. That's all I could find. 2 paragraphs, maybe a half page in total, and some of that I discovered later was wrong. And so thus began my, I guess I could say, my love affair with archives and archivists. So I have to say once I mean, that particular time I wrote to Alan Seberg, Carl Seberg, sorry, at the UUA Information, and he actually had a history of that Brown had written, Egbert Ethelred Brown, about his ministry in Harlem. And so that became the basis of my, I've got stories, my basis of what I did. When I finally got to, a year later, when I finally, General Assembly was in Boston, and I was supposed to be going to meet, plenaries. I didn't go to any plenaries. I spent all my time on the 7th floor of 25 Beacon Street, because I discovered they had a whole file drawer full of materials about Egbert Ethelred Brown. So that's, you gotta like dust. And that's how I got started. I've once spent an entire week in New York City archives, from Community Church, All Souls Church, Brooklyn, Shelter Rock, and the Schomburg. And you have to, that's the New York Public Library in Harlem that has enormous amounts of material about African Americans. I said an entire week, and generally when I traveled, that's what I would do. I mean, God, if I go to All Souls DC, I'd end up in the archive. That's how I met. I'm sorry. Is it Jim? I'm gonna say Jim. Is Jim? Stop, help me. Was it Harvard? I'm at Harvard. I corresponded with Harvard this week, actually, because I found some other material I sent them. Actually, this week, it becomes part of your life. I had materials. Well, we cleaned our house. Oh my God, we cleaned our house, and we went into the pit, as our storage locker, and I ended up with a whole box, a banker's box full of stuff that I sent to Meadville Lombard, and then I ended up with a big vanilla folder that I sent to Harvard, just because that's what happens when you get, when you start doing this, you just start collecting stuff. I was going to go off that way, but I would go this way. So I collected so much stuff, actually, that I ended up, when I retired from parish ministry, I didn't have any place to put it. I always kept it in the church basement. And so I gave it all to Meadville, and then I would go to Chicago to visit my dad, and then I would spend my mornings at Meadville organizing it. And then Michelle Bentley, our colleague, was interested, and then Michelle started working on it. And out of our kind of collaboration, the Sankofa project, this Sankofa collection began. So that's why Meadville actually has a significant amount of material about African Americans, among other things. So the other thing I want to say, since our congregations tend to attract people who are new to UUism, they don't necessarily have a sense of our history or tradition. And we learn, and this is what both of them have been saying, we learn by listening to stories, and we learn what our narrative of our congregation is, and what story are we emerging out of, and what story are we trying to live up to, or what story are we trying to change. But the way we take in information is through stories, and that gives a sense of now who we are and who we want to be and what the trajectory is. And I think that we need that. That's the way our lives are. If you things have changed. We don't talk about integration so much anymore. We don't talk about interracial. We talk about multiculturalism. But if you look at the congregations that have become successfully and integral or multicultural, you have to start with Community Church in New York, and then Chicago first, then All Souls DC, Restoration in Philadelphia, Cincinnati first, Atlanta. There's patterns, and you'll find there's patterns, and there were challenges, and they're all fairly similar. But how do we understand that change over time? So I could keep going, but I will save more. I'll save for more for later. Thank you.
Wow, such a rich exploration of reflections. It's amazing. We have a few minutes if you all have any final thoughts you want to share, or if you want to pose a question to one another. Barbara, did I see your hand? Oh, wait, what's going on?
Something going on?
I'm not hearing.
You hear me?
Who was that?
Mark, what?
I can hear you, Mark.
The other two are on mute.
Huh,
They're both
what
muted.
happened?
Jim and Barbara are both muted.
I didn't do anything.
Now I can speak.
Oh, okay. And Jim, did you mute yourself? Because I didn't do anything. Well, while
Sometimes
He's
When you
now
come back in-
unmuted.
Okay.
Jim, you
No,
need
he's-
to unmute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Now
Okay,
you
so
have to
Barbara-
listen to me.
Barbara has the floor.
Yes, I wanted to add one footnote to the All Souls story. Very recently this year, a member of our Asian affinity group had a presentation. His name is Shige Shigori, and what was very interesting was that in looking back at members of First Unitarian in Washington, D.C., he identified a Eurasian member who was one of the original members who gave money. He and his father and brother are listed among the early Unitarians in the 1800s.
Wow.
Wow.
There are stories out there to be told, and many are discoveries, and that is a discovery. Now, what it will take to include that in the story that we tell in Washington Unitarianism, who knows? There's a lot of unpacking to do, but that there is a mixed race person of Indian, Eurasian background that was one of the early members, that's a story.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. And it just reaffirms for me the need to really encourage congregants' appreciation of research and the value, like as Mark talked about the narrative and using the stories to define and to project who we are and our vision for who we desire to be, is you can't do that if you exclude or render invisible the presence of maybe BIPOC members from the past. And also, our movement cannot continue to rely on the Mark Morrison-Reeds, the Barbaras, and the Jims. We need our lay people to get involved and to be passionate and enthusiastic about the research, understanding this is their story. This is their story, and they need to be able to tell it accurately. They need to be able to connect it to actual events, and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, and yet I'm just so thrilled about the inroads that we have made as individuals, and I see the collective of Unitarian Universalists moving closer to being able to see our history as a spiritual tool, as a part of our spirituality, and part of our resistance efforts toward anti-racism, anti-oppression, multiculturalism, and moving toward, as Dr. King says, beloved community. So unless there are some burning final comments, I'm going to wrap up and thank each of you and continue. I'm going to encourage you to continue to do the wonderful work that you are doing. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, be blessed and be a blessing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.